you're working so hard to, you know, for 35 minutes, whatever it is that you're airborne, there's somewhere you need to be every second. So you're trying to get there on time, on speed, and be where you need to be so that the next maneuver comes in on time. I majored in phys ed at Florida State. I taught school in my hometown at a middle school. I was coaching basketball and golf, even though I don't play golf. And I've got 3 younger sisters, and one of them wanted to be an aerospace engineer and always had interest in NASA. And so my father said, well, maybe you ought to go take flying lessons. Well, there's a grass strip a couple of miles from home, so she went out there and took lessons in a Cessna. And I just couldn't stand it that my snot-nosed little sister was doing something way cooler than what I was doing. So I went out and took a couple of lessons myself. Well, this was the summer after I was teaching that first year, and I found out that I was not made to be a school teacher. And so I wandered into a recruiter's office one day. My dad had been bugging me, go see a recruiter. And I didn't want anything to do with the military. This wasn't all that long after the Vietnam War, so it was not a popular thing to be in the military. So I wandered into an office, and my dad had been in the Marine Corps Reserve, so I went to see the Marine first. He was on the phone, so I said, I'll come back later. So I went next door to the Navy guy, and he starts flipping through a notebook. Picture on one side, job description on the other, and flips through ships and submarines and turns the page, and there's an airplane. I thought, well, that's kind of cool. What do you have to do for that? He says, come back Saturday, I'll give you the test. I went, nah, I'm not going to waste my Saturday doing that. Well, he kept pushing and pushing. Finally, he's like, all right, I'll come Saturday and do the test. 6 months later, I'm in officer candidate school at Pensacola with a brand new haircut. Didn't have my shoulder length hair like I did in college. And started flying airplanes, and it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. I was chosen to be a surgrad, which means selectively retained graduate. What it really means is the Navy was too cheap to send you to the fleet and then bring you back as an instructor. And they thought, you know, we could save some money if we took some of these guys that just graduated and we'll make them instructors. That way we don't have to move them to the West Coast or the East Coast and then bring them back 3 or 4 years later to be an instructor. So that's what happened to me. I didn't want to do it at the time. I was not happy about that. It's like, wait a minute, I just quit being a teacher because I don't like being a teacher, and now you're going to make me be a teacher again. But looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I got some more time and experience. And back then, the deal was, you got your first choice after being a surgrad of what airplane you wanted to fly. And I really wanted to fly the Tomcat. So it got me there. I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not been a surgrad. So in the long run, couldn't have been better. But I was at Miramar. I went to VF2, the bullets. Deployed aboard USS Kitty Hawk. It wasn't that long after the hostage crisis in Iran, so there was always a carrier off the coast of Iran. So that was kind of the routine. You'd go through Hawaii, Japan, you know, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, and you know, work your way over Philippines, and then you'd relieve whatever carrier was in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Iran at that time. They'd normally been out there for roughly 90 days. There was a little article, one paragraph, as I recall, in the ship's newspaper. There was an article in there that said the Blue Angels are accepting applications for, you know, public affairs officer, a flight surgeon, a C-130 pilot, and 3 demo pilots or something like that. Typical ad they send out every December or January. I never dreamed of it, and even then it was like I was kind of embarrassed to even think maybe I could do that. But you're out there at sea, you got time to think. So fortunately, the XO of my sister squadron was Vance Parker, Star Parker. So I saw him in the hallway one day, and I pulled him aside and said, hey, what do you think? You know, should I try something like that, or am I, you know, just be honest with me. Tell me I'm crazy if I shouldn't do it. But he was very encouraging. He couldn't have been any more positive. I'm like, wow, that's something. Well, our CAG, commander of the air group, was Ernie Christensen, another former Blue. So one day I see him in the hall, and I was like, CAG, can I talk to you off to the side? So same kind of thing. I asked him this question, like, you know, what do you think? I don't know about this, you know, am I crazy? And he was the same way. He was like, no, give it a shot. You got nothing to lose, go for it, you know. So I thought, what the heck? So I submitted the paperwork, and this was rather painful. They get me on the phone in the ready room, but they're having a brief going on. So I'm on the phone, kind of hiding behind the desk of the squadron duty officer, trying not to interrupt their briefing. It's Kurt Watson is doing most of the talking, and he says, you know, we had the Yuma Air Show a couple of weeks ago, and you didn't even come by to see us. You know, that was really disappointing because, you know, we kind of thought you had a chance, but when you didn't come, and I'm like, no, I didn't come. I just didn't want to bother you guys. I've been hanging out with you for a month, so I figured you were tired of me. So I'll just leave you alone. He goes, well, you know, sorry. And then all the other guys are on the other lines, and so they all chime in, welcome aboard, you know, and you're coming to Pensacola. So that changed my life. I was the narrator. That was the last year of the A4, 1986. You don't go to winter training right away when everybody else does. They normally go the first week of January and train until about middle of March, and you start flying air shows. The way it works for the narrator and number 8, the events coordinator, they go together in the 2-seat airplane, and they go to all the show sites around the country. They meet with the FAA, the Air Show Committee, just set up all the little things that have to be arranged ahead of time, trying to make sure that they're on track to be able to provide all the things that we need so that they can have an air show. So you don't show up in El Centro till about first or second week of February. And so then as the narrator, I would go out to the desert each day when they're out there practicing their maneuvers. I'm out there, the guys have set up a speaker system with a microphone, and you narrate to the rabbits and roadrunners and snakes out there, and do that twice a day and try to learn your narration. But I was glad to be the narrator my first year. A lot of guys, I don't want to do that. You're just a gopher. I want to be flying in the air show. Well, I'm a slow learner, so I thought this would help me a lot. Give me a year to figure out the rest of this Blue Angel stuff, and then get me into the flying part, and that'll give me a leg up, you know, next year.
This is Lieutenant Wayne Molnar, narrator for the Blue Angels. Since 1940.
The main thing that had everybody excited was this was the last A4 show and the first, you know, Hornet team to follow. And so at the end of the show, show's over, the jets pull in, they park, and then, okay, from the right, Cliff Skelton, who's going to be the narrator next year, relieved me of my job. He was an F-18 RAG instructor in Jacksonville. He'd been picked, and so he taxis out the first blue and gold Hornet and parks it right by the boss's blue and gold A4. And so that was kind of the moment, you know, that everybody'd been waiting for. Pat Walsh, our slot pilot, he was the only guy on the team other than Cliff Skelton that had any F-18 time. So he'd written a training syllabus for us. We went to Jacksonville to NAS Cecil Field, which was where the F-18 RAG was. We went through a shortened course. I want to say it was like a dozen flights. I don't remember, but it was a quick, you know, like 3-week course. We spent some time in the simulator going through procedures and emergency training and things like that. And then we flew some flights around Cecil. I remember going down, we flew to Key West over a weekend, and we flew like 3 flights a day, you know, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then came back, more training the next week. So it's kind of quick and dirty. And then they said, all right, you're qualified, good luck, don't mess it up, and off we go to El Centro. But El Centro was really busy. And as a new guy, actually that year, I was the only new guy of the 6 demo pilots. They froze the rest of the team. The Diamond was the same 4 guys in the same 4 spots. Kurt Watson had been on the last A4 team, but that was his 4th year. And so he left. Dave Anderson went from opposing solo to number 5 as the lead solo, and he trained me. If anybody was holding up the training process, it was me. So I just buried my head and tried to do as best I could. Hollywood couldn't have been a better lead solo. He was so patient with me. So El Centro was great. It worked out really well, but yeah, a lot of pressure to make sure we were progressing and going to be on time to start the season. First air show was at Yuma, Arizona, Marine Corps Air Station over there. Yeah, it was suddenly different because now we'd been practicing at El Centro, so you knew where all the checkpoints were, you knew how to set up the maneuvers. You weren't good, but you were getting better at it. Well, now we just flew over to Yuma, and now there's all different checkpoints, different runways, different landmarks, different buildings, different roads, different trees, different houses, different patterns. And so your first time out of the chute, you're trying to deal with that, and you've never done that before. You've never gone to a new place to learn all the checkpoints. So that was the hardest part. I remember finishing the first day, you circle around, normally 2 airplanes at a time, so 5 and 6 would circle around, and you're comparing your photograph to what's on the ground, trying to decide what you're going to use for your 3-mile checkpoint, your 2-mile checkpoint, so forth. And I remember thinking at the end of the day, it's like, there is no way I can fly an air show tomorrow. But we walked out to the jets and flew an air show the next day, so it worked. Most solo pilots will tell you their favorite maneuver was the tuck-over roll. And if you asked them what was your hardest maneuver, they would say the tuck-over roll. That was probably also why it was their favorite, because if you got it right, you felt real good about it. And what that is solos would come in from the right, and number 6 is leading this one. Most of them are done. So you roll it in upside, both of you guys are upside down, so 5 is flying formation on 6. And as you get close to center point, about 1,200 feet right, as I remember, the lead solo says, ready, hit it, and both airplanes roll simultaneously, so you actually lose sight of each other in the roll, and then you go out the other side. And so to the crowd, it looks like you've, well, obviously come in upside down, but it looks like the airplanes have switched positions during this roll, and then you go out the other side. And it's just hard to get that right every time. San Francisco was probably most people's favorite. It was very hard. It was also flown by design late in the season because you weren't good enough to fly that show in March or April. People are surprised to hear you say that the show might be different early in the season than later. Yeah, the team gets better as the season goes on. You move maneuvers a little closer and a little lower to the ground, a little closer, lower to the ground. So a team you see fly in April and a team you see fly in October, you see quite a bit of a different air show. You'll see a refined, better air show, better formation. But most people will tell you the harder ones are the ones they also like the most, just because it was so cool. It's like, you mean I get to fly over downtown San Francisco, I can do pylon turns around buildings, and there are 100 people on every roof waving at you, and I'm waving at them as I fly by. So you get to do that, and you get to fly right along Fisherman's Wharf and Golden Gate Bridge over here, the Oakland Bay Bridge over there, and make all the noise I want for 30 minutes. And it's like, it's pretty fun. The crew chiefs we had, those are the ones you get the closest to because you spend time. They own the jet. They just let me borrow it for 30 minutes a day. And it was almost like a competition between crew chiefs to see who had the best looking jet. I mean, they'd go out there and wax the thing in the middle of the night. My crew chief would take white out, the stuff we used to correct typing with, and he'd go out to my tires and he would make the Goodyear into white letter tires on my plane. Nobody else had white letter tires but mine. He would spend extra time polishing the, what we call the turkey feathers. It's the nozzles on the back of the engines, because they were a material that didn't shine very much. He polished mine. So, I mean, those guys were just great. Sometimes they might have to work all the way through the night. I remember in the Hornet, something had happened with the fuel cell. There was a leak or something. So they take the top of the airplane off right behind the canopy. They got everything out and there's this big fuel cell. Well, Fat Albert flew somewhere, got the bladder for that, flew it back. Middle of the night, they reinstalled that thing. We flew a test hop on it the next morning and it's back in the air show. Nobody ever knew there was a problem. But those are the kind of things they will do without being asked. They're just going to make sure that jet's ready to fly tomorrow. Really great guys. So we met with the T-Birds that first year out in Nellis at Las Vegas at their base. Flew air shows together and then went out to have some Mexican food and a couple of cocktails, and we just had a blast yucking it up with those guys. I mean, it was like we were brothers. We didn't know these guys, but you know, we're cut from the same cloth, and so we had a great time. Then the next year, they came to Pensacola. These guys had been on the road for 3 or 4 weeks, you know, East Coast trip, so they go from one to the other without going back to Nellis. Well, so they fly in that afternoon, and while they're doing their circling maneuvers to pick up their checkpoints, because we're going to fly a practice air show together the following day, they finish doing that, they land, and so we're going through a debrief and kind of setting up what we've got arranged for the next couple of days while they're in town. And these guys are all scratch golfers, and they are so excited because when they're circling the field, they can see the golf course there at NAS Pensacola. And it's like, man, this is going to be great. They've been wanting some days off because they've been working for a month straight. And so they all get out, they've all got their custom golf bags, you know, Thunderbirds written all over the thing. And these guys are scratch golfers. I think we only had one guy that ever even picked up a putter before, and that was a putt-putt. Well, so we thought this through ahead of time because the Thunderbirds are known for high class with everything they have and do. So we're going to form up in the parking lot the next morning, and we're going to go play golf. We had some golf balls made up with the Blue Angel logo on it. So we're passing the golf balls out and the tees and everything. They've got their stuff loaded up. We got like 10 cars. And so we tell them, say, oh, by the way, we're not going to play at the course on base. We're playing at a country club in town, and we're going to stop and pick up a couple of our honorary Blue Angels. They're going to play with us. So just follow us. And so we're leading the way out there. Well, we get, I don't know, it's about a mile or so out the base, and we pull into a bowling alley. And they're like, what are we doing here? Oh, we're just picking up some people. Oh, y'all come on in while we're waiting. Well, we're bowling. We're not playing golf that day. So we've got, this is like 10 in the morning, and we've got the bowling alley to ourselves. And they were not happy. They wanted to play golf. And the fact that we were jerking them around didn't make it any better. And the fact that we were bowling made it even worse. Well, it turned out to be as fun as it could have been, because now, rather than playing a foursome, and you got 2 of their guys and 2 of our guys, you only get to know those 2 guys. Well, now we're bowling on 4 lanes, we're switching teams, we're mixing it all up. The pitchers of beer are coming, the dips and chip. And so you got to know everybody, hang out with everybody. And you know, they were mad for about the first game, but once we got through the first game, we couldn't have had a better time. So it was kind of fun to kind of stick it to them a little bit. I have 2 lives. There was a fork in the road. I have a life that I had before a Blue Angel, and I have a life that happened once I became a Blue Angel. And it took me places and did things for me. Even now, somebody will mention something and I'll meet somebody that I would have never met had that not happened in my life. And I had a great life before that. I mean, it's not like I was, you know, miserable or something, but you know, if my life was this good before, it was that good after. And I've met so many great people and gone places and done things, and still hang out with guys on the team. There's a bunch of us that go skiing out in Colorado in February. You know, 8 or 9 of us that like skiing. We also did a charity event. Well, we're doing one now with the Blue Angel Foundation. Obviously involved with a lot of guys there doing good work to help raise money for wounded vets. But a lot of us had done a charity event before that, working with Bernie Willett, an honorary, to raise money for, one was a golf event. We raised money for breast cancer, and the other was a ski event to raise money for cystic fibrosis. And we did that for 27, 8 years, whatever it was. Raised millions of dollars for both those charities. And so a lot of that was hanging out with those same guys.